We are.
Oh, yeah.
Selection night, chairs have
Yeah,
to be
sure.
smashed.
That's right.
Oh, I see some people here that do
Oh. Hey, all set?
Yeah.
Hey, good evening and welcome to the November 6th Clifton Park Town Board meeting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Pat, you call.
Councilor Whalen here, Councilor Stenhouse here, Councilor Romano.
Here.
Councilor Holloway here, Supervisor Barrett.
Here, entertain a motion to approve town board meeting minutes, October 10th and 16th.
So moved.
Second.
By Mr. Romano, second by Ms. Waller. Discussion?
Councilor Whalen.
Yes.
Councilor Stenhouse. Yes. Councilor Romano.
Yes.
Councilor Holloway. Yes. Supervisor Barrett.
Yes, communications and announcements. Quick reminder, tomorrow is election day, so there are local races on the ballot as well as constitutional convention questions. If you haven't had a chance to read up on those yet, please do so. Some very important issues on the ballot tomorrow, so hopefully everybody will go out and vote. Tomorrow, polls will be open all day into the evening, so plenty of opportunity for you. And any questions, you can call our town clerk, Pat O'Donnell, 371-6651. Anyone else? We want to mention, stand on the 15th.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, 15th, we have, we're in the midst of our youth court training. All the new recruits for youth court, now in our fourth year, go through each year. The new recruits go through several weeks of training. And our last week of training for this fall session will be November 15th. It'll be at the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. And it'll feature a couple of speakers. And you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. The November 15th meeting will be our last meeting. We have our third one tomorrow. We have our fourth one next Tuesday. But the 15th will be especially poignant, and I see Dana Barrett, one of our former youth court community board members back there. I will be inviting all youth court members who've already been trained to this meeting. We will have our victim advocate Linda Campion speak, who has spoken to our youth court kids many times. But we will also have a former addict join us that evening to speak to the kids, because a lot of the offenses that we see in youth court do pertain to this situation. So I think he's really going to have a good impact on our kids. And if Dana could help me get the word out to some of our current members and to come to this class, it's going to be an exciting one, and I think it's going to be one that they will remember and be able to use in their youth court roles.
Yeah, it's very. We recently had a multi-municipality forum on opioid abuse and drug addiction. One of the speakers was a gentleman by the name of Jason Bourbon. He's 35 years old, former addict. He's been clean for over 2 years, and all the speakers were great. We had a gentleman from DEA in Albany. We had a mom whose son died from an overdose. We had Sheriff Zerlo and Mr. Bourbon. And we thought he would be a perfect candidate to speak to students directly in a different form. And the youth court training session would be a good time for that opportunity to occur. We have a captive audience with all the new recruits, and then we have a much larger, we have 55, 60 new recruits, and then we've got a much larger roster of students that are still involved in the program that have already gone through the training and some hearings in past years. But we want to open that event on the 15th at 7 o'clock up to students that are not involved in youth court. And Jason grew up at Exit 8. Came from a very solid family. His dad passed away in his preteen years, which had an effect on him. And he made some bad decisions, as he will tell the story, which led to many years of abuse, addiction, jail, and recovery. So it's a story that has had a happy ending, but he can speak very, very clear, very poignantly to the issues that many in our region are facing. So, like I said, he is a very powerful speaker and can really talk to the students, I'll say on their level, just because of the manner in which he speaks, his background, having grown up in Clifton Park, and his ability to connect with students. I think it's much different hearing it from somebody in law enforcement or somebody in the town board or teachers, administrators, so on and so forth, than hearing it from somebody who's 35 years old and has just been through an incredible journey to where he is today. So anyway, yes, thank you. We'll be spreading the word, and again, it's open to any student that would like to attend. Okay, any other communications or announcements? All right. I do want to congratulate the Not So Common Players. Had another great run. I Love You Because was a big hit. So much so that we had a sold-out show. It's free theater. It shouldn't be, though. It's quality. Free is not a negative connotation in this sense. It's a group that's supported by the town of Clifton Park. But had some sold-out shows, and the response was terrific. So they'll be back. We do a few of these performances each year, so they'll be back to do another week and a half or so of performances. And what's the next place?
We had to ask you the name, but it's the end of April and the beginning of May, and it will be at the library, and it is, I want to say As the World Turns, but that's not that would be a good one.
Yeah, that would.
Like sands through the ocean. Oh, that's a different one. That's the moments of your life. That's a moment of our life. Some things you just never forget. They just stick with you. Like bad songs and bad shows. All right, let's get this meeting back on track here. Anyway, great job, Not So Common Players. Fantastic. Okay. First up tonight, we had a gentleman that worked for the town and came in. His employment with the town started during a difficult period for our building department and the town itself. And his name was Frank Tarbell, and he's very well thought of. Many people that worked with Frank are still employed with the town today, and we're very sorry to hear of his passing. He has some family here tonight, but we do have a resolution in his honor, and I'll ask Pat to read that. Pat?
This is resolution number 267 of 2017, a resolution commemorating the life and contributions of Frank S. Tarbell. Whereas the town board wishes to recognize and remember Frank Tarbell, a former director of the town's Department of Building and Development, who passed away on October 10, 2017. And whereas Frank Tarbell served as the first director of the town's Building and Development Department and developed many of the systems and methods for the operations of the department, consolidating fire marshal, code enforcement, and building inspection functions for the town. And whereas Mr. Tarbell was born in 1928 and served honorably in the United States Army for 30 years, beginning before the end of World War II and extending through the Korean War, the Cold War, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. And whereas Colonel Tarbell's military career included assignments behind the Iron Curtain in Cold War Poland, helping to pioneer military satellite intelligence, including analysis during the Cuban Missile Crisis, serving as chief engineer on Okinawa during the reversion of control of that island to Japan, and teaching military science at RPI. And whereas upon retiring from the military, Frank Tarbell used his strategy and organizational skills as Director of Aviation for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, managing operations at Republic Regional Airport on Long Island and Stewart International Airport in Newburgh, New York. And whereas from 1986 to 1993 as the Director of Building and Development for the town of Clifton Park, Mr. Tarbell implemented the filing, internal communication, and organizational system still in use by the department today. And whereas Frank Tarbell left a lasting impression with those who worked with him as one whose efforts also helped to make Clifton Park a better, safer community. And whereas upon retirement from the building department, Frank continued to serve as a consultant to the town with his high level of expertise to review and update the town zoning code. And whereas the town board wishes to remember Frank S. Tarbell and to recognize his achievements throughout the long and successful career, now therefore be resolved that Frank S. Tarbell is gratefully recognized by the Clifton Park Town Board on behalf of all the citizens of the town for his service to his country and to his community.
Great. I will move that we approve the resolution with a second by the board. You approve it? Okay, Pat?
Councilman Miller?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Walworth? Supervisor Barry?
Yes. And as I mentioned, Frank's wife, June, is here with us this evening. She has also other family members. If they'd like to join me up front here. Well, we're so glad that you could make it. Now, I do want to ask you about Frank's artillery punch.
Oh, I think that's a big secret.
Frank, I was Derek in our building department. We wanted to make sure that I mentioned Frank's artillery punch. Apparently, it was world renowned and made an appearance every holiday season.
Yes, yeah.
So I never got a chance to try that, but I'm sure it was memorable. Or maybe it wasn't memorable. I'm not sure. It was a surefire way to cure memories, maybe. I don't know. But Frank did a lot for the town. Obviously, what he learned in the military, he brought to his job here at the town. He had a keen interest and pride in his service to the country and to the town. And like I said, it came in at a difficult time. The town had gone through some tumultuous times with such rapid development that occurred in the town. We went from a very small town to 30,000 people in the 1980s. So that it was quite a rapid population growth, especially considering we're only at about 37 now, all these years later. But we do thank him for his service. Thank you for being here, and we're so glad we had the opportunity to remember him as a town board publicly here at an official meeting. So God bless you, and we hope for all the best for you and your entire family.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
I'm just going to get a quick picture here, if you don't mind.
Frank just loved the town, and I think everybody can feel that they're safe, their house is safe,
Yeah.
and he didn't always make a lot of friends with the builders.
Join the club.
But he just loved the town, and we both all did, and I'm sorry to leave.
Yeah. Well, it was, like I said, it was a tough time, and it's a difficult job because a lot of times you are saying no or correcting what a builder might be doing, or or possibly writing the ticket because somebody's doing something incorrectly. So yeah, it is a difficult job, and one that he obviously took very seriously. And I think when he came in, it was a real sea change from how things had operated in the past.
Absolutely.
And whenever that happens, and I know this firsthand, by the way, whenever that happens, you do get some people that don't like that. They like the way things used to be, and they just want that to continue. But everything evolves, and things must improve and get better. And he did that, and I hope we're all following that example during our service over the years. So God bless you.
And he loved it. Thank you.
Very good.
And he couldn't have done it alone. He
Mm.
had a great group in the building department, and as you say, there's still some there. And,
Yeah.
And they just all came together, and that was a great department. So, Thank you all.
Well, God bless you. And again, good luck to you, and we wish you all the best in the future.
It's a new life.
Yes.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jim. God bless. If you need anything.
Good night.
Okay. Well, I was just talking about evolving and things changing, and hopefully we're here to make things better, right? And we're always considering town programs, and yeah, I can hit that. And I'll deal with it. Back and forth. Okay. So along those lines, we're always analyzing and reviewing town programs, town entities, everything that the town is responsible for, and seeing how we can make things better, and hopefully accomplish that goal by spending the least amount of money possible. Okay? So we do that every day as a town board and as a team here at the town. One such instance is that we're looking at right now is the playground on the Common. Now, the playground at the Common was a great community project led by volunteers, and they did a fantastic job. Now, several years ago, the town board had considered replacing all or some of the playground structure. That floating that idea met with some significant pushback. There were a lot of people in the town, many that had been involved with the initial building of the park, and other folks that just loved the park the way it is, that came out in force and asked us not to physically change or replace the current playground that you see today. So we didn't. An update from now to then, it's a wooden structure. And wooden structures only last so long. And they require a tremendous amount of maintenance. So our folks do spend a great deal of time and effort reviewing the playground structure on a regular basis and performing maintenance items on a regular basis. Especially during the heavier usage periods. Once we get into the spring, as soon as we see that the weather is about to change and people are going to start using the playground, our folks ramp up their efforts to make sure that they're looking at that playground on a consistent basis. So I just want to go through some of the issues that we've been discussing internally. And hopefully we'll get some feedback from interested parties within the town. It's still a very popular playground. You go there, if it's at least 50 degrees, there'll be people there. Sometimes cooler, but people still use the park on a regular basis and love the park. So with that in mind, there's some very important issues that need attention, and that's what we're in the process of doing now, is establishing priorities, taking a set of goals and initiatives and things that we believe need attention, and then narrowing those down and setting priorities. One, and these aren't in any particular order, by the way, so these are just random items for discussion. Now you'll see here that back when the park was built, there were people who purchased bricks, and that totaled all or most of the money that was used to build the playground. However, after a few decades of weather and foot traffic and so on and so forth, and tree roots, as some of the trees have become bigger and roots are spreading wider, unfortunately, we've had some issues with the brick path. Now, this path goes around the circumference of the playground. But like I said, as you can see from this picture, and there's many that we could put up there, but this is just one example, We have some bricks that are deteriorating, that are missing, and just not in good condition. Now, as we see these issues, we've responded and ensured that the brick pathway is safe to walk on, but it's not an ideal situation. And we spend more time discussing this particular problem than any other. And that is due to the fact that if you bought a brick back a few decades ago to help support the park, that you have a feeling of ownership of the park. So the question is, what to do with the bricks? Now the bricks that don't have a name on them, well, that's pretty easy. Get rid of them. The ones that have the names on them, like I said, somebody purchased them, they have their name on it, there's some ownership involved, and that is something that we need to figure out. If we were to remove every single brick that had a name on it, obviously the time, the effort, the handwork to do that would be enormous. And then once you have the bricks, what do you do with them? Well, you can put out a general statement publicly letting people know if you had a brick there and you want your brick, we have it here for you. That's one option. We could take all of those bricks with the names on them and possibly install them back into a path or some kind of attachment to the park. Not sure how that would look. But again, talking about the handwork and the effort to take all of those bricks out one by one, saving them, and then reinstalling them into a different use would be a major, major undertaking. So we want to do the right thing. We want to fix the area. Now, a lot of you might be saying, well, once you remove all the bricks, what would you do? We would likely plant grass and leave it as is. So that's one of the items that we've been discussing and will continue to discuss. And as always, we're open to any ideas. This is, and I'm going to talk in, as far as the playground goes, I'm going to talk in quadrants. So as you enter the main entrance of the playground, you have quadrants. You have the left front, left rear, right rear. Okay. I think it's much easier for people to picture that as opposed to using east, south, west, and north. So this is in the right rear quadrant. This is the area closest to the ice arena. There's a fence back there, and there's also an unused piece of equipment, standalone piece of equipment. And we're considering removing that fence since it does not really serve a purpose. It was part of the original design, but it does not really serve a purpose that we can see. It is in tough shape. We could certainly put a lot of time and effort into fixing it. But again, I think by opening the park up, the playground area up, it provides us more alternatives and options for the future. So again, that's in the right rear quadrant. In the towards the back of the playground, you have these tires, these stepping stone tires. Kids may have gone under them, but they're really at times, but they're really meant to walk on. We would propose removing those. There is some kind of concrete underneath those tires because it heaved over the wintertime. I was down there and saw that there was a piece of concrete that was sticking up underneath the tires, and I had the guys go jackhammer it out and make this. If somebody had tried to go under the tires, it would have scraped them up a little bit. So they jackhammered out the slab. It's no longer there. But again, this is something that's installed in the ground, and I don't think it's maybe as popular an item as it was back 30 years ago. All right, now we're looking at the playground from the rear. And so there's that fence. The furthest most portion of the playground there is the fence I was just talking about. And the, I don't know if this has well, at least the town board can see this. This is the one structure I was talking about right here. The one standalone structure that really doesn't get any use. And some of these structures, they at least in the beginning, they swing They swing a little bit. You can stand on them, sit on them. They swing a little bit. They've broken over the years. They've been fixed, but you can only fix them so many times. So we propose removing that fencing and removing that individual piece of equipment that gets really little or no use. And again, just to open things up and provide some more options and alternatives as we improve the park in the future. This slide, it's been fixed many, many times. It's an original as far as I know. And we would propose replacing that slide. It's, again, you can only fix something so many times. We want to make sure we have a safe park, and we would propose taking that slide out, replacing it with something similar. Okay, this is where we would propose to make the largest amount of changes, and this would be the left front quadrant. Okay, so if you're coming in from the front of the playground, it'd be on your left in the front. All of these connect, and they are connected. As you can see, you've got this standalone with a swing here, the swing that doesn't swing anymore. This area, which was a boardwalk of some type, tires where you could walk up to this little thing here where you could kind of toggle a little bit. We would propose take all of that out and replace it with what we would call a toddler section. We would install new equipment based on a younger age group. There's a lot of parents there with very young kids. We'd take out all of those attractions and equipment there, replace it with a toddler age group equipment. We've looked at some possibilities. No decisions have been made. But we'd also do something a little more exciting and different, and that would be to, when new equipment is installed, to add a foam floor, or foam, poured rubber, I guess is the official term for it. So it would be something brand new. Right now, for those that haven't been to the park or maybe don't remember, there's pea stone there throughout the park, which has its supporters and detractors. Pea stone is much less expensive than, say, a poured rubber floor, but it has served the park well over the years. So we would, with any new equipment that we put in, we install, we'd like to have the new foam, the newest technology, safest technology installed with it. So again, this is the front left quadrant of the park. Now this is the entrance of the park. We'd like to do something different there to improve the aesthetics. Now, as you can see, those little posts, they're kind of, they're like I guess the best way to describe it, if you know what a 4x4 post looks like, only picture it round as opposed to square. And they're installed at different heights. None of them are very far off the ground, maybe a couple feet tops. But there's a good number of them. And what we'd like to do there is take those out and do something different with the front of the park. As you can see, there's quite a few bricks there as well. Now that area gets the most amount of foot traffic on the brick pathway. Again, so we got two issues there. We've got the front of the park and those little posts and the bricks. I think that's it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. So, what does that mean? Well, what we've tried to do is narrow down what we can do in-house and what we can't. So when you're talking about the front of the park here, this can all theoretically be done by town personnel. They can certainly easily take out those posts, depending on what the final decision is with the bricks. They can also take out the bricks. although they would do that in mass as opposed to one at a time. If we were to decide to do them one at a time, remove them and keep them or put them aside, that's something that we'd have to consider whether we do the work in-house or hire a contractor. This area that I was talking about, where one idea being considered is the new toddler section, that would be completed by a contractor. That would have to be absolutely done by a contractor. It would go out to bid. What we would do is couple a bid, put a bid together for the slide and that toddler section into one bid. All of that would be done by a contractor. Removal of the fence and the one piece of equipment in the back here, that could be done by town personnel. So again, that would not cost any, wouldn't require any cash outlay. We could do that in-house. Dan Clemens has already looked at everything and is very confident that they can do the job. Stepping stone tires, same thing. Town personnel would complete that task as well, and there's the back fencing, and again the one question about the bricks. So the other thing that we've discussed that does need to be done is some more finishing work on the wood structure itself, and also new staining. Now the staining, the last time the staining was done was several years ago by a Boy Scout. That was his Eagle Scout project, and that was a great community project. He had at least a couple dozen volunteers that I saw when I was down there. So, and that's what it takes. It takes a lot of people to get that job done. There's a lot of staining that needs to be done at that park. Once you attack that wooden structure, there's a lot to do. So it's something we could do as a community project. It's something we could do conceivably in-house, or it's something that we can put out to bid and have a contractor do. So there's some questions there as well, but it does need to be done. And I think that's about it. Now we still have $100,000 set aside that we set aside a few years ago when we considered making changes to the park. So that money is still set aside. So we still have money designated for this purpose. Depending on the priorities and what the town board decides we want to do in regard to changes at the park, well, that may require more money. It all depends. I can tell you the most expensive item is would be the sanding. Well, no, I guess it wouldn't be. Most expensive would be the toddler section. The new toddler zone would be approximately $60,000, and then the rubber foam would be $80,000. The board rubber. I'm sorry, $19,500 approximately. So together, $80,000. So that's the most expensive item. The second most expensive item would be if we hired somebody to do some finishing work to the playground and stain it. They have that estimated at $50,000 just for that task alone, which is a lot of money. So by replacing a few things, but that toddler section will be definitely the most expensive. That alone would be about $80,000. Again, that's a rough estimate. Who knows? Might come in lower once we go to bid. I want to thank Jim Whalen for his help as we've talked about this internally. We have two town employees that were involved with building the park at the time. One is Lori Adams. Lori Hughes, she was involved with coordinating the volunteers and when this was built, and it took a lot of volunteers to build it. And Bob Adams, who works in our building department, he oversaw the construction. So we've also pulled them in to discuss some of these ideas and to give us some historical background on the formation of the park and also how it was constructed. So we have that knowledge right here in house, which is nice. I want to thank Morgan Brooks, a gentleman that I've been talking to, interested parent. He has young kids that go to the park and has a very strong affection, I would say, that'd be safe to say, for the park itself. Mr. Llewellyn, was there anything you want to say?
No, I think this is a good. I think it's a good start. Nothing lasts forever. You know, Bob and Lori made that point the other day that 30 years ago the intent was this will last forever, and obviously, nothing lasts forever. But I think it's a good. I think it's a good improvement. I think toddler area, especially, I think it'll be a really good improvement. I think we certainly talked about that. It's geared, I think, towards older kids, running around with the equipment. Obviously, parents have
Currently, yeah.
with children of different age groups and different skill levels, and I think this will be a much better area for parents with kids of different ages to be able to have a toddler in the toddler area and an older kid playing on the other equipment.
Yeah, I agree. I think all the ideas that have been submitted so far are definitely worthy of consideration. Like I said, the item we spent the most time on was the bricks and how to make sure that we handle that appropriately. Because like I said, there's a lot of ownership. Now, I've heard different numbers about the bricks. I think they were I've heard $20, $25, people paid back in the day. We don't have a master list of everybody that purchased a brick, unfortunately. That would be helpful, since some of the bricks aren't readable anymore and some are missing. We don't, and we can't find a master list anywhere in town hall, so I don't know. Yeah, because you looked everywhere in the post office.
I have a brick, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking people who have bricks, if there was a way we could get the word out, maybe they would come and dig up their own brick.
Well, we talked about that, and maybe setting a weekend where we would have a couple of volunteers there on a Saturday or Sunday, and say, if you'd like to, if you would like your brick, please come down during these times on a Saturday or Sunday, and we have volunteers and we rope off the playground.
Yeah.
And volunteers would be there, and they would remove the brick for you.
I would say most of those bricks are in memory of someone, so that's why it's important that they be treated well,
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the toughest thing, because the brick path has outlived its usefulness at this point. Something needs to be done. It needs to be resurrected or replaced. But at the same time, there is, as I mentioned previously, a definite ownership of the bricks by many people that still reside in town.
I mean, when I go over there with my grandchildren, the first thing we do is to go look at the brick.
That's right. So that's what we're dealing with on that issue. But that was one possibility, where we'd have some volunteers there that would remove the brick. The folks that want to come down. So we do have some different ideas. We try to, think of different ways to make it work and make it right for everybody that would like to keep their brick. If we had a master list, I'd like to make up a new sign or announce that there's just, unfortunately, without that information in town hall, that wouldn't be possible. So, it's been 30 years, and the park is obviously still very, very, very popular, and it's used by a lot of kids and families each and every year. Still a successful venture after all these years, and I commend everybody that worked so hard to build the park in the beginning. All right, so more to come. Again, this is just a starting point. We'll get some information up on the website about these considerations. that are under review and some different ideas, and we'd love to receive some more feedback. And I thank Morgan for all of his feedback so far. And but we thought it would be important to get these items out publicly so we could attain as much input from Clifton Park residents as possible. Okay. Are there any questions before we move on? Yes.
Quickly, the toddler section that you're going to do, will
Oh,
that be in the original wood structure like the other structures, or will it be the new, like, plastic structures that are washable that kind of look like wood? Or have you?
No, it would not be. We didn't envision any new equipment being of the same style and substance as the main park that you see there today. It would be different. It would be the new types of materials, and as I mentioned, the poured rubber,
Yes.
flooring.
Which is all washable. I mean, the new materials, even with the playground equipment, are safely washable or something else.
Right. Yeah. So, no, we wouldn't envision trying to replicate the same style and substance of playground that you see there with any new equipment. As a matter of fact, I think with if we were to install new equipment in that area, I would see it as a transition point, where a starting point where as the remainder of the park is replaced, which it's a wooden structure, it will need to be replaced at some point. This will be a transition point to something new, and set a new standard for the playground for the future. That's how I would envision it.
Good idea.
All right, so like I said, we'll get that information up on the website and hopefully get some more feedback. All right, we do have resolutions for consideration. Pat, if you would read through those, and we'll consider each one individually.
A resolution authorizing change order number 1 to contract number 1 for the transfer station hopper repairs. Whereas on May 1st, 2017, the contract for transfer station hopper repairs was awarded by resolution number 113 to R&B Construction, Amsterdam, New York, in the amount of $44,125. And whereas McDonald Engineering has verified all costs listed in the invoices for an additional amount of $8,896. And whereas McDonald Engineering has reported that field conditions encountered during the project required additional work and repairs, which resulted in unforeseen costs. And whereas McDonald Engineering documented damage to the concrete walls and compaction channels that were encountered only after the existing copper structures were demolished and removed. Now therefore be resolved that the town board hereby accepts change order number 1 to increase the contract by $8,896 to be paid from, and that line is listed. A resolution authorizing change order number 1 to contract number 1 for the installation of baseball safety netting at Longville 1 Park District. Whereas on July 17, 2017, the contract for improvements to the Martin Jewett Park was awarded by resolution number 180 of 2017 to Sienna Fence Company, Round Lake, New York, in the amount of $50,230. Whereas the project incurred additional costs for increasing the height and amount of baseball safety netting, Martin Jewett Baseball Field, now therefore be resolved that the town board hereby accepts change order number 1 to increase the contract by $19,540 to be paid with the transfer fund, and those lines are listed. Resolution authorizing the installation of a street light at the entrance to Heritage Point subdivision at the intersection of Grooms Road and Heritage Point Drive. Whereas the subdivision was approved by resolution by the Clifton Park Planning Board on March 24, 2014, pursuant to the approved final subdivision plan titled Heritage Point Residential Subdivision. And whereas per Town Code Section 17928A provides it shall be the responsibility of the owner to provide appropriate street lighting at the intersection of the proposed street with an existing arterial street in accordance with Illuminating Engineering Society and National Grid and NYSEG requirements. And whereas the planning department has determined that the installation of the streetlight is warranted at this time, now therefore be it resolved that authorization is hereby granted for the installation of a streetlight at the entrance to the Heritage Point residential subdivision at the intersection of Heritage Point Drive and Booth Road, and be further resolved that said streetlight should be charged to the Clifton Park Lighting District Number 1, and that a copy of this authorization shall be forwarded to the National Grid Utility Company. A resolution authorizing the posted speed limit of a portion of Carlton Road to be reduced from 45 miles per hour to 40 miles per hour. Whereas it is the policy of the town of Clifton Park to set speed limits that reflect the reasonable and prudent behavior of both motorists acting in an appropriate manner, as well as the characteristics of the traffic, roadway, and adjacent roadside environment. And whereas the town's Highway Safety Committee has reviewed the existing conditions on Carlton Road, and based on their analysis has offered a recommendation to the town board that the speed limit be reduced from 45 to 40 miles per hour for a portion of Carlton Road within the town of Clifton Park. And whereas Carlton Road is classified as a residential collector street, and whereas a visual site analysis and speed study support a request for a reduction in speed limits with factors that include narrow shoulders, 40 miles per hour existing speed limit for an existing portion of Carlton Road outside the study area, and mature vegetation adjacent to the roadway, shoulder, and pedestrian bicycle activity. Now therefore be resolved that the town board of the town of Clifton Park accepts the recommendation of the Highway Safety Committee and hereby authorizes the posted speed limit of Carlton Road within the town of Clifton Park to be reduced from 45 miles per hour to 40 miles per hour. And be it further resolved that the highway superintendent is authorized to replace the existing speed limit signs to reflect the new miles per hour speed limit. A resolution authorizing the highway superintendent to install a stop sign on Cider Mill Drive at the intersection with Apple Tree Lane. Whereas the Highway Safety Committee, existing conditions at the intersection of Cider Mill Drive and Apple Tree Lane, and whereas the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices provides guidance on the installation of stop or yield signs at an intersection if a restricted view exists that requires road use to stop in order to adequately observe conflicting traffic on the through street or highway. And whereas visual observation at the intersection has confirmed limited sight distance for Cider Mill Drive motorists approaching the T section due to the horizontal curve of Apple Tree Lane and existing mature vegetation within the Apple Tree Lane right-of-way. And whereas the Highway Safety Committee has recommended the placement of a stop sign at the location, now therefore be it resolved that Superintendent of Highways is hereby authorized to install a stop sign for motorists on Cider Mill Drive entering the T section with Apple Tree Lane. Resolution awarding the contract for siding repairs to the pavilion at Veterans Park. Whereas the exterior of the pavilion at Veterans Park is in need of maintenance and repairs, and whereas the town requested quotes for removal of its existing exterior siding, installing wrapping and new siding, and whereas quotes were received on or before October 18, 2017, and whereas Ballard Contracting submitted the lowest quote in the amount of $4,100, and whereas Daniel Clemens, Recreation Maintenance Supervisor, recommends that the contract be awarded to Ballard Contracting. Now there will be resolved that the contract for siding repairs to the pavilion at Veterans Park is awarded to the Ballard Contracting for an amount not to exceed $4,100 to be paid from Veterans Park equipment. A resolution adding Susan Leonard to the list of town of Clifton Park employees authorized to approve purchases. Resolution 256 of 2017 updated and amended the list of employees authorized to approve purchases. And whereas Susan Leonard was recently appointed as director of the Clifton Park Senior Community Center, and whereas the supervisor wishes to add the director of the Clifton Park Senior Community Center to the list of employees authorized to approve purchases, now therefore be resolved that the town board hereby adds Susan Leonard, director of the Clifton Park Senior Community Center, to the list of employees authorized to approve purchases as of November 2017. A resolution appointing Margaret Springley as secretary and Mary Kathleen Smith as the alternate secretary to the Ethics Board. Whereas an opening exists for a secretary to the Ethics Board appeal and to provide administrative support to the Ethics Board when the regular secretary is unavailable. And whereas Supervisor Barrett recommends Margaret Springley, principal typist in the legal department, to fill the position of secretary, and Mayor Kathleen Smith, current zoning board of appeals secretary, as the alternate. Now that she resolved that Margaret Springley is hereby appointed as secretary, and Mayor Kathleen Smith is appointed as alternate secretary to the ethics board effective October 20th, 2017, at a salary as budgeted. A resolution authorizing St. George's School to use town roadways for their 6th annual turkey trot on November 23rd, 2017. Whereas St. George's School on Route 146 would like to host its 6th annual turkey trot on Thanksgiving morning, November 23rd, 2017. And whereas the 5K event will begin at St. George's School, proceed to Moe Road, then Clifton Park Center Road, onto Shenandoah campus by Tasago Elementary School, continue through the campus, reaching main entrance on Route 146, and right on Route 146, and then back at St. George's School. And that therefore be resolved that authorization is given to St. George's School to use town roadways for their 6th annual Turkey Trot 5K race event on November 23rd, 2017 at 8 a.m. A resolution authorizing the supervisor to accept a proposal for professional engineering services for future public access improvements at the Rossville Nature Preserve. Whereas the Rossville Nature Preserve, acquired by the town in 2006, is designated as priority open space in 2016 update to the New York State Open Space Plan. And whereas the Town Open Space, Riverfront, and Trails Committee recommends the retention of professional engineering services to design potential improvements to the Longfellow Trail, the Pierce Road entrance and parking area, and additional amenities to increase public access and utilization. And whereas Environmental Design Partnership has submitted a proposal for the site plan design and related wetland delineation in the amount of $14,000, and whereas sufficient funds remain available in the current year's open space capital improvements budget to offset the engineering costs associated with the design work, now that it was out that the supervisor is authorized to approve the attached proposal for the design services from Environmental Design Partnership, and be it further resolved that the controller is authorized to compensate Environmental Design Partnership in an amount not to exceed $14,000, and the line is listed. A resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign change order number 2 for construction, inspection, and management for the Erie Canal Community Connector Trail Project. Whereas by Resolution 154 of 2015, the town board authorized a contract for construction, inspection, and management services with Greenman Peterson Engineers for the Erie Canal Community Connector Trail Project, linking the towns of Half Moon and Clifton Park along with a 4.4-mile route closely following the Erie Canal towpath from the Bishop Ferry Preserve to Plamstein Road in the town of Half Moon. And whereas by Resolution 163 of 2016, the town board authorized the construction contract with Gallo Construction Corporation for the project with a construction schedule for completion by December 31st, 2016. And whereas by Resolution number 41 of 2017, the town board authorized change order number 1 to the construction contract with Gallo Construction Corp. dated December 22nd, 2016, to change the construction completion deadline to May 5th, 2017, which included no additional cost to the town of Clifton Park, and the town board additionally authorized supplemental number 1 to the Greenman Peterson Engineering Construction Inspection Contract. And whereas as of May 25th, 2017, Greenman Peterson Inc. issued change order number 2, its final change order, to balance all items, resulting in a revised project amount of minus $156,428.25. Now, therefore be resolved that the town board authorizes the supervisor to sign change order number 2 to the Greenman Peterson Engineers and Constructive Services contract, and be further resolved that the controller is authorized to unencumber $156,428.25 with, there's a line listed as a result of the change order. I think that's it.
Okay. Are there any questions on the resolutions? Okay. Pat, if you read the headings, and we'll consider each resolution individually.
Resolution number 268 of 2017, a resolution authorizing change order number 1 to contract number 1 for the transfer station hopper repairs.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Mr. Romano, second by Ms. Wallowitz. Last year, our engineers were doing some inspections of the transfer station. When we say hopper repairs, the hoppers are the term used to describe the 2 areas where you dispose of your household garbage. So if you're familiar with the transfer station, you go down, throw your household garbage in one of 2 hoppers. They're big steel places of equipment with looks like a chute down below, and and they also have a compactor at the bottom. So they did some routine inspections and saw that there was deterioration in the hopper itself, and some repairs needed to be made, repairs and replacement of steel underneath that you can't see when you're up top. When they started to remove the steel, they noticed there was much more work needed than originally thought. There was some deterioration of the concrete walls on both hopper systems, so that work needed to be done. So as we hire a contractor and they win the bid, we hire them, they come in, they begin to do the work. We have inspectors that are there on a regular basis watching what's going on, and when it was clear that there was more work that needed to be done and the concrete needed to be repaired, that was going to increase the total cost of the project, and it did so by $8,800. Okay. I want to thank everybody for their patience, because we had to shut off one hopper at a time. So instead of having 2 hoppers available, when you went down to the transfer station, there was only 1. And I know that caused a little bit of a backup once in a while, but appreciate everybody's patience. Pat?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Malowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 269 of 2017, a resolution authorizing change order number 1 to contract number 1 for the installation of baseball safety netting at Long Hill Water Park.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. This is for the baseball field that's closest to the road up at Long Hill Park. We have new netting and a guardrail to protect not only players but spectators, and baseball netting to keep the balls on the field. We've had older kids playing there that are in a club, a baseball club, a traveling club, and they're older kids, and we had a couple instances where balls were leaving the park, getting out into the road, which obviously is a safety issue. And we've had more spectators, and where the spectators were sitting or standing was very close to the road. It was between the road and the backstop and the fencing area by the benches, but very close to the road, and a safety concern. If the car had gone off the road, there could have been a terrible incident. So having the guardrail there is also important, as well as the netting. And it will ensure the long-term viability of that field. So even if it turns into something other than a baseball field someday by chance, whatever sport might be played there, both the guardrail and the netting will be very important to the future use of that field and safety of the people using it. Any questions? Okay, Pat?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Malowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 270 of 2017, a resolution authorizing the installation of a street light at the entrance to the Heritage Point residential subdivision at the intersection of Grooms Road and Heritage Point Drive.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Walowitz, second by Mr. Whalen. Pat?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Malowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barrett?
Yes.
Resolution number 271 of 2017, a resolution authorizing the posted speed limit of a portion of Carlton Road to be reduced from 45 to 40 miles per hour.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Romano, second by Ms. Walowitz. This was an issue that was referred to our Highway Safety Committee. And John Scavo, our Planning Director, and Dan Bull, our Highway Superintendent, attend those meetings and discuss these issues with our Highway Safety Committee. John, obviously they agreed with the request of residents to lower that speed limit.
Yes, we gathered speed data with a radar device on Carlton Road. We determined that the 85th percentile was at 45 miles an hour, so 85% of the people driving that road were traveling at 45 miles or less. The 50th percentile was approximately 38 miles per hour. And when we use our speed policy within the town, we look at the road geometry, the horizontal curve alignments, we're looking at the mature vegetation along the edges of the right-of-way, and the shoulder width, which was approximately 2 feet. 4 feet would be ideal, and based on the factors and the conditions when we evaluated the situation, based on our speed policy, 40 miles an hour is what that road would be rated at using that policy.
Very good. Any questions for John? Dan, do you have anything to add on that?
Nope, I know the residents will be very happy, that's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Beth?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Walbert? Yes. Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Resolution number 272 of 2017, a resolution authorizing the highway superintendent to install a stop sign on Cider Mill Drive at the intersection of Apple Tree Lane.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Whalen, second by Mrs. Standard. This was another issue reviewed by the Highway Safety Committee with a recommendation to install a stop sign. Is that correct, John?
Yes, the resident, the initial concern was speed, and the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MUTCD, which is the federal standard that the community follows, does not allow stop signs to be used for speed control. But when our traffic engineers and highway superintendent went out to the field to evaluate the conditions, what they did note was limited sight visibility on Apple Tree, so that when you come into the T intersection from Cider Mill, based on when you actually see the vehicle, you think it's going faster than 30 miles an hour, but it's really traveling the speed limit. It's because of the shorter sight distance for visibility that the car appears to be going faster than what it actually is. With limited sight distance, MUTCD does allow the placement of a stop sign. Doesn't warrant a three-leg stop sign for the intersection, so the recommendation of highway safety with the highway superintendent was for the installation of one stop sign at Cider Mill for the vehicles entering the intersection that normally would have to yield in regular conditions for vehicles on Apple Tree, but because of limited sight distance, it's recommended that they come to a complete stop before proceeding into the intersection.
Okay. Very good. Any questions for John? We do once again thank the Highway Safety Committee for all their hard work, a tremendous amount of expertise, knowledge, and experience on that committee, and they do a great job for the town. Pat?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Walbert?
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Resolution number 273 of 2017, a resolution awarding the contract for siding repairs to the pavilion at Veterans Park.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Wallet, second by Mr. Whalen. $4,100 for siding repairs. Pat?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Walbert?
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Resolution number 274 of 2017, a resolution adding Susan Leonard to the list of town department employees authorized to approve purchases.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Wallet, second by Mr. Romano. Discussion?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Walbert?
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Resolution number 275 of 2017, a resolution appointing Margaret Springley as secretary and Mary Kathleen Smith as the alternate secretary to the Ethics Board.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Romano, second by Mr. Whalen. Discussion? Okay.
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Walbert?
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Resolution number 276 of 2017, a resolution authorizing St. George's School to use town roadways for their 6th annual turkey trot on November 23rd, 2017.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Standard, second by Mr. Whalen. Dan? Do a little turkey trot this year?
Yep, like it says, it's going to be their 6th annual. New York State Department of Transportation and New York State Troopers have been notified that they will be running on the sidewalk along Route 146 At that intersection of Mow and 146, there will be volunteers to offer all the runners to go down the Mow Road Trail. At the intersection of Clifton Park Center and Mow, they will take a right, and at Clifton Park Center, volunteers will be all along Clifton Park Center. County Sheriff has been notified, and per this resolution, our town security will be notified of that route, and the school has signed off on them traveling on their property as well.
Very good.
Certificate of insurance has been made available. I'll get it to the town clerk and the town attorney as soon as possible.
She'll be asking you for it if you don't. Okay. Pat?
Councilman Wheeler.
Yes.
Councilman Stanner.
Yes.
Councilman Romano. Councilman Walowitz. Supervisor Barron.
Yes.
Resolution number 277 of 2017, a resolution authorizing the supervisor to accept a proposal for professional engineering services for future public access improvements at the Rossville Nature Preserve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Romano, second by Mrs. Standard. John, tell us a little bit about this.
Yes, sir. The Dewasville Nature Preserve is approximately 248 acres of a nature preserve. It's part of a greater 500 acres of the Dewasville natural area with the Dewasville Stream. As previously noted at other meetings, the Dewasville Stream has naturally spawning brook trout. Frank is not here this evening. I'm sure he'd have the photos if nobody's seen them. On top of that, the town, when we purchased the Dewasville just over 10 years ago, I believe, we did seek funding for the Dewasville Nature Preserve Plan, which set some priorities for future uses and access of the preserve area. Within that plan, it talks about increasing access along Pierce and Kins Road for the public. And over the last decade, we have had improvement projects both to the habitat, and one example is removing 2 perched culverts in the stream that actually blocked the migration of the fish within the stream. And we also had 3 Eagle Scout projects over the last decade improve fishing access trail and planting vegetation along what was previously used for sand mining activities prior to the town purchasing it to stabilize erosion, and an outdoor classroom as recent as 2014 along Pierce Road. As part of that outdoor classroom, parking currently is along the shoulder of Pierce Road. The original Dewasville nature plan for the preserve calls for enhancing that area to allow off-street parking rather than the shoulder, and also possibly accommodate school buses so it can be utilized as an outdoor working classroom. The scope of work here is for environmental design partnerships to work with town staff in developing those next phases to put together a scope of work and then evaluating what can be constructed in-house versus potentially having to go out to bid for a contractor to help complete to improve access along Pierce Road for residents and people outside of the community that regularly use that nature preserve area.
Very good. And the Dewasville Nature Preserve is one of the town's purchases since 2000, where we've permanently protected more than 1,300 acres of property in the town, and it's great to see this 250-acre parcel being used more and more each year. So we want to stay ahead of the curve and be able to improve access for Clifton Park residents that want to enjoy the Dewasville Nature Preserve. Any discussion? Jim, did you want to say anything?
No,
Okay.
just that we've done some in-house repairs on the trail entrance and at the path, and it's time that we had some professionals take a look at it because it keeps washing out, and there needs to be some more extensive work done inside.
Yeah, the guys are fixing a small bridge in there right now. Okay, Pat?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Stewart?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Walowitz?
Yes.
Supervisor Barron?
Yes.
Resolution number 278 of 2017, a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign change order number 2 for construction, inspection, and management for the Erie Canal Community Connector Trail project.
So,
Second.
Moved by Mr. Whalen, second by Mrs. Standard. This was a significant drop. I can find the resolution. Significant drop in the total price of the project, down over $150,000. So the change order is in the positive for the town in a large amount. This was a beautiful new trail that we just finished this year down in the Fisher Ferry Preserve. The trail goes from one end of the preserve to the new part and drops you off underneath the twin bridges. So it's a nice long walk in a beautiful area. You can see the waterfront. You can explore. You can go further west from the preserve and explore for a long time. So it's been a great project. We're very happy with it, and always pleased to see large decreases in the total cost of the projects. Any discussion? Okay, Beth?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard?
Yes.
Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Walbert? Yes. Supervisor Farrell?
Yes. Any other business to come before the board this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to public privilege. If you'd like to speak about a town topic, please raise your hand. We'll ask that you come forward. State your name and address for the record, and please keep it to 5 minutes or less. Any takers this evening? Well, we got some students. I know you guys got some questions. No? No questions? Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second by Mr. Whalen. Pat?
Councilman Whalen?
Yes.
Councilman Standard? Yes. Councilman Romano?
Yes.
Councilman Walbert? Yes. Supervisor Farrell?
Yes, thank you.